So now let me turn to Bob Farquer and his Blair Line build along, which actually is going to start on April the 17th. That's the first official night. But Bob tonight is going to start us out on what really is required and the kind of tools and that kind of thing. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Oops, come on here. Okay.
Oh, I do want to mention one thing, Bob, before you start.
Yeah.
The Blair Line is offering this with a 25% off coupon, plus free shipping in the U.S. and only $10 shipping if it has to go to Canada, and only $15 if it has to go other places in the world. So for U.S. buyers, you get a 25% discount plus free shipping. Excuse me, Bob.
That's fine. That's what I have on the first sheet here anyway.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's fine. So anyway, I got my kit early this week, and it's a nice kit. I'm really impressed with the design and the laser cutting and everything else. So it's available in scale, HO scale, and O scale. So anyway, so the first thing you have to do is that I'd say read it. If you when you get the kit, read the instructions and try to get an idea of what they're trying to say. If some of it's confusing, just forget about it. Just get a basic idea. Then what you can do, this is a parts of the kit, and they're all in little frames or frets or whatever you want to call them. For example, this is going to be the base. That's the main base. You're looking at the back of it right here. And then the front wall, it's a scribe siding. And the side walls are board and batten siding and so on. There's the roofing is up here. And there's signs come with it and so on. And if you do have an itch to cut these pieces out, they're very well designed in the sense that, for example, this base piece has 4 attach points here. All along here that the lasers cut right through nicely. A little tab in there, you cut them out. Turn the pieces over from the back side if you're going to cut them out early, rather than wait until the 17th of April to start. And the reason is if the knife slips for any reason, you're just destroying the back of it. You're not going to affect the front of it. And also, like this is tab slot construction. You can see the little tabs sitting out here. And for example, right there, there's a spot for the shed back. There's a shed at the back of this thing, and it'll attach into this rear wall, for example. And if you do going to be taking the pieces out of the frames, leave this one intact the way it is, because you're going to be painting on this the way it is. That's for future reference. Considerations on the roofing. Now, it does come from tar paper roofing. This is like a dirty black, what's in there right now. It looks to be like a Tim effect cap on here. And if you want to be able to do it maybe a gray color or green, make sure you have those paints available. I'll talk about that again in a moment. The coloring, generally these general stores, they're generally white in North America. So you're probably going to stay with that color. The color I'm going to be using is going to be called warm white. I'll talk about that in a minute. This appears to have a concrete base. So I'm going to be painting mine concrete. And the lighting now, Jeff Bunza does a nice job on lighting. He's explaining it in the past presentation. So I'm not going to be talking about lighting here. I'm not going to be detailing the interior of this at all, and there's no real need to. This canopy that's over top of it, it pretty much blocks a lot of the view, unless you're down low looking into the windows. It's going to be dark inside anyway. And the detail, I'm going to, the end of this presentation, like later on, like in April, I'm going to be doing like maybe with the general store. This is shown here, it's a grocery. The signage has a bunch of things, different choices here. Grocery store, general store, things like that. I'm going to do with this as general store. Step ladder is going to be up in here, and some tools and so on. I'll be doing that. It doesn't come with a kit, but the weathering in here appears like to be chalk weathering in here and also along in here. I'm going to be talking about 2 different types of weathering as they're doing the build. And the signage now, they have about 2 or 3 times much signage than what's on here right now. So there's lots of choices for signs. And if you're Canada, we don't have Moxie. And also we don't have KIST or lay bust. A lot of these things don't apply. So you may have to go into the internet and download some pictures of signage and for the, there's an example of different type of roof, and this is like a rib seam roofing, for example. This is a steel roof, even though it looks like a rib here, it is not. Just laying it over top here, coloring of a building. And there's an example of a white. Generally, I said that these stores are generally white color, and there's an example of it. You can do it in a bare wood if you like. If you want to do really, really old, dilapidated, for an example, that's a consideration. I'm going to be talking about that during the build as well. Now, to start out, that's not a really good way to start on a workbench. This is, and that's like you don't need this. You don't need this much space. So that's the way to start out, though. So basic tools. So this is an X-Acto knife with a number 11, a fresh, clean blade. Start with a clean blade, whatever you do. I like using the pointed sticks for applying the glue. I use a single edge razor blade a lot. So if that got available, tweezers only be available for, you need it for the signage. Nice to put the signage on proper place with this tweezer. Maybe a file. You don't have to have one if you have a bit of sandpaper. I would say about 180 grit or 240 grit, something like that. Straight edge. That's for cutting out the signage and weights. If you don't have weights, you can do heavy books or things like that. For nice to have, clamps of some sort. These are hair clips. I use them in a lot for painting and holding the light pressure on things. Actually, the elastic could be used for holding the building in place where the glue dries. This actually comes with a kit. Because you've got a bunch of the instructions are taped across in the kit and so on. This is a quarter here, for example, for sizing. This is what I use for my roofing. I use this pretty much on every build I do. This is a bunch of dried beans or dried peas in nylon stockings. Make sure the person's not wearing them when you're doing this, so they get upset. And then you sew it up here, just hand sew it like here. I'm going to be doing the brass bristle brush, or you can use a steel bristle. If you see in a dollar store or something, a nylon brush, do not bother. That's a waste of money. You can't do anything with it anyway. And maybe brush your teeth. But anyway, I'm going to be using that to the weathering effects. You don't have to have it, but that's I use that pretty much on every build. You want to have some kind of a machinist square or even a carpenter's square to get square corners. Make sure you get square corners in there. So these are all the glues you will need. Oh, we messing with you. You only need a white glue. That's suggested in the kit as well. I talked about this before in other presentations. I use this Elmer's glue all. Do not get the Elmer's school glue. That's a waste of money. That is, it doesn't work well. But this glue all does well. The well bond is equally as good. And the around here, it's easier. I get easier access for Elmer's glue on that I do well bond. I can't find that around here. I don't know why. But you'll see in some instructions on the internet or other kits, they may say use carpenter's glue. And I prefer using the white glue. The reason is if you happen to get into a hurry, apply a wall or a piece glue a piece, and you run along and do something else. And then the next day you realize it isn't sitting in there properly. It isn't square to the other piece or whatever's happening. You can easily let a drop of water in there, let it sit for a minute, and you can actually separate the parts again. Carpenter's glue, it's permanent. You cannot do anything with it other than you have to do is get a saw and cut it apart, and then you pretty much ruin your building. So I might recommend either a Wilbon white glue or the Elmer's glue all, one of those two. Stay away from this stuff. Anything that says a urethane glue, the reason is as soon as it hits air, it does expand quite a bit. Actually, this whole piece actually is bumped up. You can't see it that well, but I tried this as a test. It does hold really well, but it's useless. You can't clean this up. You can't do anything with it. For applying the glue, I use a Pringles lid. I put the drop of glue on here. Use that toothpick, touch the glue in there, add it to the part. Then I clean off the end of the toothpick on the piece of paper towel. And you can put on into wax paper pieces. What happens though, when you put the touch the toothpick to the glue, actually the paper will come up with it because it's too light. That's got enough weight to it to hold in place. The paints are going to be adjusting. I said the base is going to be concrete color. So I ran out of my Badger's concrete color and also my polyscale. And do not bother with aged concrete. It comes out too yellow. But this one here is called mudstone, or you can also do Mississippi. Don't use a full white, it's too bright. And don't use a full black, for example. I'm going to use a grimy black on the roof, or you can use a green or a dark gray for an example. It's your choice. Make sure you have them on hand when you start the build. And on the instructions, Dale, what he's done in here said primer paint, the gray primer paint on all the parts. I'm going to show doing that as well as doing staining as well. That's going to be a choice with you how you want to do your building. Now you can use regular paint brushes to paint the walls and so on. But I'm going to be using a grout sponge, and I love this because they are tiny, tiny holes in there. Put a dab of paint on a piece of wax paper, scrape that along there, and then you start dabbing it onto the wood pieces. That's what I do with all my painting now is with the grout sponge. You can't use a house, or you can use a house sponge, but the holes are so big and so irregular that you have to do it, you have to dab quite a bit, and you can end up with excess paint on there too. So you use a grout sponge or a paintbrush, it's your choice. So for example, now you hear about alcohol in the ink, also referred to as AI or A&I. And the stuff that you get is Higgins ink, but make sure it's water soluble. You have to look because most of them they're not water soluble. Or you can use a black leather shoe dye. And either one of them, you make sure you don't spilling on anything because it's permanent. Like it makes a mess. I've been recently using this 100 line weathering mix called Driftwood. The only thing is these things are about 18 bucks a bottle and the shipping's even worse. So, and this is like what I do. This is about the size of a silver dollar, this cup, and I'm using alcohol. You can use water as a mixing with either one of these. If you're going to use water because of hydrostatic tension, you just a little drop of soap, and then it'll spread easier. You don't need very much because this stuff goes a long way. And so this is an example here for the Indie ink. There's 3 drops. Now, if you don't have an eyedropper, you put a scrap of wood in here and hang it over top of this stuff and then let the 3 drops go down. That's the coloring of it. There's 6 drops. And that's what I would be using is 6 drops. There's 9 that's too dark unless you want a really rotten type of wood. This is an example for the shoe dye, 3 drops, 6 drops, and 9. Again, it's too dark there. And we're coming close to the end here. For the lighting, I'm not doing really real lighting, but I'm going to put a light on the shed at the back of the building. And what I use is a shirt pins. Though this particular one comes with a silver already in here, and some of the other ones are red, blue, yellow, whatever, and you can paint them silver. And I use this lampshade, and then just glue it. Put a bit of glue right here, stick it in through, let it dry. Put a pair of pliers on here, and then you can bend this into a gooseneck shape. So here's some examples. Now, don't forget that this particular building we're going to be doing has a canopy over here, so you won't see much of the interior. But there's an example of a step ladder type sitting in here. You can do bags of cement or something out here if you want to make them up. And there's shovels and picks and so on. And so this is some ideas. There's an idea if you wanted maybe do some detail on the inside anyway. You can pick this off the internet. Just look Google for interiors, general store interiors, and click on images, and you can get that. You can put on a piece of board, stick it about 1 inch behind the front window, and you'll be good to go. Because you're not gonna be doing lighting in there enough to be able to see this anyway. So that's it. Any questions?
Well, Bob, I thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
That was very informative.
Good.
And the nice part about it is, for everybody's information, this will be posted separately on our YouTube channel. New Tracks Modeling is the YouTube channel. So while Bob covered an awful lot tonight, you can go back to see his piece individually, because it'll be on our channel tomorrow or the next day. And you'll be able to take your time and view it as many times as you want to. What we're doing, we're going to be doing that with all of the individual segments of the series. So you don't have to worry about necessarily coming and spending 15 or 20 minutes trying to keep up with Bob or doing exactly what Bob does and so forth. The purpose of this is try to give you some kind of concept of what's involved in building this kit. And how a real talented modeler approaches it. The tools he uses, the paints he uses, the glues he uses, the research that he tries to do, which involves this kind of building, and then actually what he does step by step. And we hope that you'll enjoy it. We hope that you'll find it informative. And we know that Bob's an excellent builder, so we're not worried about that part of it. But you will be able to see it time and time again if you'll go to our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling.